Hey guys, welcome to this new video. Today we're gonna discuss about teaching English in Vietnam. So you guess that I'm not an English teacher myself, so I invited someone to join me for an interview to discuss about everything you need to know if you wanna move to Vietnam to become an English teacher. Let's get started. Hi, David. I'm happy to have you here to discuss today about the future of ESL jobs in Vietnam. Maybe to get started, can you tell us a little bit your story? When did you move to Asia and for how long you've been living in Vietnam and what you basically did here?
Yeah, definitely. So I moved out to Vietnam early 2015 during the Tet period. I actually came out because my job told me to take a vacation, and a lot of people I know are Vietnamese. They said go out to Vietnam. It's cheap, you'll love it. It's a good 2 weeks. And I went out there during the Tet, and I came back home. I went back to work, and I bought a one-way ticket a week later. And 7 years later, here we are. So that's kind of my how I got to Vietnam. It was kind of a at the wing thing, no regrets. Me personally, I've been teaching out there, start businesses and stuff, and now today, bro, all these things I've done have brought me to you today. So I'm excited.
Okay, cool, David. So yeah, I'm excited as well to discuss today about the ESL job. Obviously, I'm French. I'm just teaching English. I did met before some French people teaching English in Vietnam, but I feel that it's more obviously people who are native speakers who could teach English here. Can you tell us a little bit how was it before, let's say 5 years ago? Could anyone teach English here in Vietnam, and how is it now, like in terms of diploma, in terms of requirements for foreigners to teach English in Vietnam?
Okay, that's actually a really big question. So let's kind of step into the parts here. The first part, 5 years ago, anybody could have got a job. This is mostly the South. So if you're in Saigon, Pontiac, all the way up to about Nha Trang. You could get a job just with a smile, which was really nice. When you got to Hanoi, it got more illegal. You had to have the permits, you had to have your degree and whatnot to get that. So it was really easy to get jobs. It was a great spot where people from Thailand or Cambodia or something could come by, make a few extra bucks, and then kind of carry on with their trips, which was pretty common in South Vietnam. But again, in the north, it was a more serious thing. And what's happened over the years is it's really changed. The government's broken down. You've probably heard about the whole, they call it the purge of the visas. And part of that, and I know I've talked about a lot of my channel, it wasn't really a purge, it was a reinforcement of the rules. So ideally, the election just happened about a year ago, and the new guy is actually from the north, and he wanted to kind of unify the regulations. And in the north, anybody that's ever tried to get a teaching job, you can't really get an under the table job in the north because they require you to have a work permit. This is very highly regulated. So how it's changing, especially with the whole purge thing going on, is it's gonna be more qualified. And if anybody follows, there's another channel, ADV China, that's talked about this a lot, and how they purged out a lot of illegal Western people. They came down to Vietnam. I see that this is happening again, but it's happening in Vietnam, leaving people to kind of find a new spot at some points if they're not qualified.
So you share it a bit about what happened this year in 2021 in around June, that we got some new regulation for the work permit, and as well with the chaotic time that came at the same time in Vietnam. Many foreigners had to leave for either because they couldn't fit with the work permit requirements, or just because they were maybe also tired about the situation here in Vietnam and the uncertainty about the country. Can you talk a little bit about the myth? I guess many people think that it's very easy to find a job in Vietnam as a ESL teacher, right? Can you tackle a little bit those myths? And is it really that easy? And what would be basically the diploma and the requirements that would be now mandatory?
So if we're talking legal, you would need a TEFL. Is it obvious? You need a bachelor's degree. I know in Europe sometimes you get a bachelor's degree in 3 years, but the idea is it's a bachelor's, no matter how long it took you to get. Um, this is kind of a big part that's changed over the last couple of years too. Is if you're an American, you can get all your paperwork done at the local embassy. I don't know about French, but I know mostly Europe, South Africa, the Philippines, and a lot of it are these countries have to send their paperwork back to their home country at this point now, where it's leaving just America is the only one where we can walk into an embassy, say, here's my documents, can you notarize them? And it's done. So the requirements are kind of there. I don't think that the getting away and teaching under the table is going to go away anytime soon. I have a few of my friends, I'm not going to name the schools, but a lot of them work at different schools around Saigon, Vung Tau, and they don't have any teachers. A lot of their teachers have left. Vung Tau is suffering. There's a couple of international schools out there that have nobody. They have a couple Filipino teachers, and that's it. Looking at bigger schools like ILA, VUS, and EMG, they're right under the 30-40% ratio of having actual teachers, to the point where they're hiring teachers online to pretty much do this, but teach English. So if you are on your way to Vietnam in the next like 3 to 5 months, if you've got your vaccinations, because they do require this now, you can probably pick up a job pretty easy under the table in the South, because the radar is kind of way up here right now, because there's more problems to deal with than worry about what a Western person's doing at this point. So easy job right now? I think so. I think in the next couple of years, though, they're going to get back to cracking down. If the pandemic never happened in Vietnam, I really feel that purge was just the beginning of what they were trying to do, getting rid of illegal teachers out there.
Interesting that that trend was already there. It's just that the pandemic kind of make a little bit a big mess in everything and kind of regulate everything very fast. You mentioned like some names, Lagi, Vung Tau, so that's cities in the south. Can you tell us a little bit about how is it teaching in big cities in Saigon, in Hanoi, versus teaching in other cities like Vung Tau, maybe Dalat, maybe Buon Ma Thuot, you know, like other cities, maybe less well known?
So I've taught I just made up a word. I've taught in a lot of different schools around Vietnam. And I have to say, the bigger cities, I was never a fan of. I'm from Hawaii. Everything's kind of small. It's country. That's my life. That's how I've always lived. But the city life is crazy. And I loved it because it was so crazy. The craziest city I think I've seen in all of Asia is Saigon. Anything you want to do, it's there for you. So to teach in like the bigger cities, you have so many options. It's like living in New York City or Miami, or living in London, right in the center of it. You're in it all. There's everything for you. Working in a smaller, like Hai Phong is kind of a smaller, Lagi is a big wood, or a small wood rather. Phan Thiet, like we get up to north, like Lao Cai, Lai Châu, where I used to work, and you start integrating with like minorities, Hmong people, Vietnamese people that have no idea what you are. And I mean that how I say it. They don't know what you are. They're confused because they've never seen anybody non-Vietnamese. So the life there, I think, is awesome. That is the true part of Vietnam. That's what made me fall in love with Vietnam, actually, was teaching in those countries, like, or in those cities, but actually teaching in like Saigon and Hanoi. It was fun. It was. I got pictures for days of fun stuff we did, but to really experience Vietnam, and it's my advice I tell everybody always, get out of the city. Like, take a trip, go to a small town for 6 months, do something. I was in Lagi because of a friend of mine, and it was just for like 4 months, and it turned into 2 years where I opened the school. So there's a lot of opportunity when you kind of just go out there. The city, though, it's very competitive. So, but it is where you can get the easy jobs at the same time. So it's kind of, it's a hit and miss, you know?
For you, like having that lifestyle and really going deep in the culture, the Vietnamese culture, and working like outside of the hotspot was for you a way to really kind of explore and at the same time being able to live. How is it in terms of salary? I didn't ask you, but like how much an English teacher can earn in Vietnam?
It varies. It varies. I've met teachers that barely make $1. So if we're going to talk under the table, I would say you make between $500 to maybe $1,200. If you're working like these small, you're going to people's houses, it's very common in Saigon to go to somebody's house and they'll turn their kitchen into an English center. There's a very common thing. You're looking at maybe like $15 to $18 an hour. And if you're getting a real job, ILA, EMG, usually base start you at about 35 million a month, which is $1,800, give or take. If you know science, me personally, I'm an engineer, so I was able to get into teaching physics and stuff like that. I started getting up to the 50 to 70 million Vietnamese dong a month. And then when you expand, once you get that experience, if you do have a degree and you have a TEFL, you can start getting to universities. I forgot the name of the school. I've never worked there though, but I know of them. The Australian school, RUS or something like that. It's a big school. You probably put some on your comment here on what it is. But it's an Aussie school. They pay between like 60 to 80 million a month. So the salaries could be insanely high. And there is kind of a golden rule that we have as teachers when it comes to salary is the South, it's very rich for the Vietnamese. The salary is bigger in Saigon for Vietnamese. In the North, the salary is bigger for us. So the numbers, when I start talking about making 70, 80, 90 million a month, that is completely possible, but it's mostly in the North. The South, it kind of caps out at about 70. But
Okay,
mind you, though, the average salary for a Vietnamese person is only like $300 or $400 in the city. So these, even if this sounds small to somebody, these are huge numbers. Like making $1,000 a month in Saigon, you can live like a king if you don't fall into that hype of getting a Western apartment. You just kind of live with the locals. You can live like a king pretty easy.
I guess you still need to put some saving on the side, right? Because when you are an expat here, you don't prepare your retirement, right? Everything has to be done by yourself. So I guess it's better to always like keep that kind of investment mindset and being able to save months after months to prepare for your old days. You mentioned about a little bit the business that you run in Vietnam. So you build a couple of English centers. Can you briefly share us about how was it and your key lessons that you get? We're going to make another video dedicated for this that you can find here. So you can directly jump into that video if you are more interested into launching an ESL business in Vietnam. But can you briefly share us your key takeaways about that?
The key takeaway is if you're from America, if you're from Australia, if you're from France, wherever you're from, and you're opening up a business in Vietnam, forget everything you know. It is not what you think it is. Vietnam culture is very different. It's about status. It's about what you can give them. It's really about that status. So the biggest thing I took away from opening these companies and being able to sell them, which I was very lucky to do, was that I had to change my actual business logic to make it successful. You can't just open a store and, offer like, I don't know, discount something because somebody's going to open the same exact restaurant next to you or the same exact business next door to you and undercut you. And this is an awesome way. If you guys are in Saigon, walk down any road in Saigon and find one store, be it a restaurant or anything, and look at the next 4 buildings next to it. They're all going to be the same exact thing. This is Vietnamese logic. We kind of just copy it. So once I figured out how to get over some of these hubs, it was one of the easiest things I did. But it is definitely a learning curve, and you do need to have a Vietnamese partner. So that you want to make sure you pick the right one, just for that aspect.
Very good insight, David.
Hey, can I show you real quick?
Yeah.
I did this because it was a joke. If you guys have seen Facebook, the movie, I thought it was quite cute. But when I first got my second stamp, I made a little Facebook put. I'll put it right there. It was kind of a joke to the whole, I'm the CEO, beep, beep, with the actual stamp of the company. Sorry,
okay,
I had
cool.
to.
Okay, David, maybe last question for this interview, because we talk about the future, right, of this industry here. You mentioned that it was very easy. Now there are still opportunities to catch because the border is closed. So if you have the proper certificate, the proper experience, you could enter Vietnam and maybe become an English teacher now. But how do you think it's going to evolve in, let's say, 1, 2, 3 years?
That's tough. Again, this takes understanding the culture of the North Vietnam to understand what happened when that election ended. So teaching is starting to change drastically, and English is starting to take a different turn. Now, when I left, teaching, like the last few years of it, it was starting to get harder. It was getting more competitive, where they were actually just hiring people under the table over professionals. And a big thing's going on. I have a lot of Filipino friends in Vietnam. Like, I think more Filipino friends than I have Vietnamese friends sometimes, I think this. And Filipinos are starting to be the ones to hire over Western Americans or German people or Canadians. And the biggest purpose, or the biggest reason for this, is one, they're qualified. A Filipino has to be a teacher of English as an actual university degree from their country. So they can't come here with an art degree and be an English teacher. They have to actually be an English teacher. Plus they have I believe it's a TEFL and something else. And what's going on is they're accepting the lower salary. They're accepting what we used to accept back in 2015, and they're working 9 to 5 jobs. They're not working for 2 hours a day and leaving. So my advice is always with this is, if you're going to go to Vietnam to be a teacher, this is a career decision for you, have a really good CV, have a good backing, and walk in there shoulders back and sell yourself, because it's getting very competitive. Pretty much 2018 all the way to about 2020, the schools were really starting to transition over to getting more professional. teachers in that regard. And the government's also made it a lot easier for Filipinos to become teachers now and actually get permits, work permits to do this, which is making it's a good thing. It's allowing more diversity in the country, definitely. But it is taking away that easy concept of you could just go to Vietnam and be a teacher for a couple of weeks and then leave. That's kind of starting to fade away. And I think in the next 5 to 6 years, it's going to be more of a competitive market than it is a grab market. Before, it was schools desperate for us. We're becoming desperate for them at this point.
Okay, interesting insight, David. I didn't really get that feedback, so it's good that you could share it. And what about the working from home with this kind of COVID still around? How do you think will be basically a day-to-day job that you have to expect if you want to teach English here?
Really just have your vaccine card. It seems like from everybody I've talked to out there, I've stopped doing these update videos because it seems like everything's good now, which is probably a good sign. But everything's open. My friends that are working at schools, being both Americans, a couple Canadians and Filipinos, they're working full time again as of last week. And they're doing their jobs. They're driving to work, no issues. They're able to walk to work if they live in Bungtao. So everything is slowly getting back together. Just have your vaccine card. A friend of mine, won't say his name, but he forgot his card walking to school about 3 days ago in Saigon, and he got sent back home. And he wasn't allowed to go to work for 2 days because he forgot that card. So they are taking that serious, which is very, very good right now because Vietnamese are getting sick with this, and it's having a higher effect than it does in different countries. So it's gonna be better. Just have your vaccine, be careful, be smart, don't be a fool. I don't think you're gonna have Bui Vinh open with drunken parties every night like it used to be 4 years ago. That's gonna be something in the future, but not right now.
Okay, David, good and well. But thanks again for your insights and your experience sharing about what you did here in Vietnam. I will leave in the description some links so you can learn a little bit more about that, and as well as David's channel. So David, you also run and have your own YouTube channel. So I will leave all the link below so you can check and eat out what David is providing.
Definitely, man. And if I could say real quick, you said you put my channel below. I have a book coming out here in about a month and a half that's going to go over all this teaching stuff that I've finally finished writing. It's taken me a couple years to write it together, but it will be on there here probably November on the channel.
Okay, cool. Go everyone to check it out. Thanks, David. And
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I'ma get it right, dead on sight like